Happy Friday mga katribo and welcome to another episode of Kalingang Katribu Legal Diaries. I'm Roy Pelovello and today we are again fortunate to be joined by Aranas Cruz, Araneta Parker, and Faustino Law Offices Associate, none other than Atty. Alfred Campañano. Good afternoon, Attorney.
Good afternoon po. Good afternoon.
Ayan, mga katribo. Today, Attorney and I will talk about RA 9225 or the Citizenship Retention and Reacquisition Act of 2003. Ayan, unang-una, Attorney, siguro una kong question. What is this RA 9225 or the Citizenship Retention and Reacquisition Act of 2003? Ano ang rationale nito?
Well, the policy behind the Citizenship Retention and Reacquisition Act is to allow natural-born citizens, natural-born citizens of the Philippines to become citizens of another country, to allow them to retain or reacquire their Philippine citizenship. So the policy here is there's a recognition that even if you acquire foreign citizenship, you are still a Filipino citizen in the eyes of the Philippine government.
Ayun. So, malinaw, this is a law para if you were, for example, a Filipino citizen, nagpunta ka sa ibang bansa, you married an alien and by married, naging ano ka, nag-acquire ka rin ng citizenship niyon, you're still considered a Filipino citizen under this law?
Yes, sir, no. Pero I think that's a misconception. There's a little bit of a misconception there. Kasi, di ba parang the policy as stated in section I think 2 or 3 of 9225 is those natural-born citizens who acquire foreign citizenship is deemed to not have lost. So, yan yung parang wording niya sa batas.
Yes.
Is deemed to not have lost their Philippine citizenship. However, there's a sort of, parang siguro pwede natin i-treat as a minor inconsistency because even if i-treat natin siya because you still have to do an act to retain, quote unquote, or to reacquire the Philippine citizenship. And by virtue of, to me anyway, by virtue of having to do said act, then necessarily there's a point in time na nawala naman pala talaga yung Philippine citizenship mo. But in any case, it's a minor thing because whether it's retention or reacquisition, the procedure laid down in the law remains the same.
Anyway, the law talks about natural-born citizens of the Philippines. Para lang maliwanagan yung ating mga katribo, sino ba itong mga natural-born citizens of the Philippines?
Well, a natural-born citizen in any country is a person who, from the moment of birth, did not do any positive act in order to acquire said citizenship. So, in the case of the Philippines, the moment na pinanganak ka, you're already considered as you are a natural-born Filipino. But to further illustrate this, or to be more specific, then is in the context of the Philippines, under Section 2, Article 4 of the Philippine Constitution, the enumerations there all enumerations there are basically those who are natural-born citizens, with the exception of the enumeration na sinasabi na those who acquired Philippine citizenship by virtue of naturalization.
Okay.
So who are they? A person who is born to at least a Filipino parent. This is basically Filipino by blood. Yung tinatawag na jus sanguinis. As opposed to jus soli, which is basically your citizenship is acquired because that's where you were born. Diba? So for example, in the United States, they follow this concept of jus soli, which is that's you are considered as a you are considered as a US citizen by fact na dun ka pinanganak. Kaya nga if you're reading some kung may mga nabasa kayo, that's actually one of the issues in the United States, yung sa border.
Yes.
Yung mga babae na gusto manganak, at the very least doon sila sa border ng United States may panganak. Parang the joke is, well, the humor there supposedly is hinahabol nila yung panganak nila, makakross sila sa border. If they are beyond that border at naipanganak nila yung anak nila, then they're already considered US US citizen. Tapos, so aside from the birth, where you were, to whom you are born from or where you were born, you also look at the statements in the Constitution itself. Those who were born before January 17, 1973 of Filipino mothers who elect Philippine citizenship upon reaching the age of majority. So this is also one thing that I'd like to emphasize lang, no? Because under the Constitution, dinidefine natin na a natural born citizen is not, are those people from birth will not be doing anything in order to perfect or acquire Philippine citizenship.
Yes.
This is an exception because under the Philippine Constitution, then in the 1973, if you were born before 17 January 1973, the importance of that date has something to do with the effectivity of the organic law at that time. Na kung saan, if you are, so meaning Filipino ang nanay mo, so meaning tatay mo is not Filipino, right? Obviously. Tapos, supposedly then, in order to be considered as a Filipino citizen, then you have to elect upon within a reasonable time, upon reaching the age of majority, you have to elect Philippine citizenship. So that's basically a positive act that allows you to perfect or acquire Philippine citizenship. So by definition, it goes against a natural born citizen. But again, this is an exception. So those people who elected Philippine citizenship, following those qualifications, meaning born before January 17, 1973 of Filipino mothers, then even if by virtue of a positive act they chose to be Philippine citizenship, they chose Philippine citizenship, then they are considered as natural born citizens. And lastly is obviously those who are considered as Filipinos, Filipino citizens nung panahon ng 1935 and 1973 Constitution. Very important lang, just like to emphasize, it's very important to understand word by word yung mga definitions and qualifications of a natural born citizen. At yan normally ang isa sa mga pinagkakaaway-awayan ng mga taong tumatakbo sa opisina. For example, case in point, si Grace po.
Yes. I remember that case.
Dago yan, diba? Yung, ano tawag sa kanya po, sir? Yung parang in order for them to, foundlings.
Yes.
Yung mga well, in any case, it's not our discussion for today. So
Anyway, I remember isang high-profile case din dyan, yung anak ng billionaire businessman na si Lucio Tan. Na na-disqualify due to a question of her citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Kasi yun yung important requirements, that's one of the qualifications.
Yes, lalo ngayon. So ngayong panahon ng election, maraming mga politikong nagre-resort doon sa mga question of citizenship para ma-disqualify ang kanilang kalaban.
It's actually possible, na yan ang mga titignan nila talaga. Mauungkatin nila kulang nila ang buong angkan mo to double check kung talagang Filipino ka ba.
Alright.
And if they're really that driven, di ba? I do the same thing.
That's one of the playbooks, one of the tricks in the playbooks of politicals come election time. But An important question about RA 9225. Curious lang ako dito. Medyo hindi ko alam masyado yung concept. Meron ako tayong naririnig na dual citizenship. Can Filipinos have more than one citizenship at the same time?
Well, yes. No, and under the, of course, my answer is viewed, no, from the perspective of Philippine government. Because kung titignan natin dyan, remember, citizenship is basically a privilege, no, that is conferred by their respective governments. So there are countries that recognize dual citizenship, the Philippines being one of those countries, and there are other countries that do not. No, na parang even if you're a dual citizen by then tinitingnan nila is that no, ito ang citizenship mo. So that would really be dependent on the country where citizenship is an issue. So in that case, circling back to the question, is obviously there is dual citizenship. There is dual or multiple citizenship, and it's recognized in the Philippines. Right? Which is basically called, ito nga, 1925 is commonly known as your dual citizenship law. But obviously, kung hindi naman dalawa, pwede ring multiple. But remember, citizenship, dual citizenship or multiple citizenship is a consequence of the application of various laws. Not just the law on the Philippines, for example, but also the application of the laws in the United States, or the application of Japan, or the laws of Japan, or whatever country it is that na yung nag-i-interact with each other. So, but as far as the Philippines is concerned, since there is this 9225, kahit ilan pa ang citizenship mo, if pwede yan sa bansa na yon, for example, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, lahat ng East Asian countries because of the Korean pop phrase right now, then as long as you qualify under 9225, then pwede ka rin maging citizen ng Pilipinas. And that's all right. As far as the laws are concerned, you're treated as a Filipino, provided that you meet the qualifications and you undertake the steps to retain or reacquire Philippine citizenship.
Ayun. Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, attorney. In my cursory reading of the 1970, yung ang ating constitution ngayon, no? Tinitingnan ko yung provisions on citizenship. There seems to be no express provision for dual citizenship, except maybe for, if I'm not mistaken, Section 3, Article 4, which says citizenship may be lost or reacquired in accordance with law. Can you elucidate on that?
I think that, again, that stems... Sorry, medyo topic. It stems from my statement a while ago that citizenship is a matter of regulation on the part of the government conferring it. Because citizenship is conferred by the government by virtue of the law. So this is a provision that we cited. That perfectly illustrates this concept in law, na kung saan most of the provisions in the Philippine Constitution are self-executing, meaning you don't need another law to regulate the same, except Article 2, which is basically these are just declaration of state policies. But there are certain provisions in the Constitution that require legislative enactments in order to give force and effect. This is one of those. In terms of citizenship is and may be adjusted, or certain conditions may be imposed, or certain conditions may be imposed before conferment of the same, as provided by the Philippine Constitution.
Ayun. Isa pang questions nagging me about this law. I was looking at the discussion in Congress about this law, and there seems to be issues raised about the possibility and tricky issue of dual allegiance. In fact, I understand may nag-file lang, may kumwesto nito sa Supreme Court because of the possibility, for example, you become a citizen of another country and you were drafted to serve as in the military, tapos naggera tayo. So that becomes now, and you're still considered a Filipino, so that becomes now a question of possibility of dual allegiance.
Actually, that's a legitimate risk. Sorry, not risk. There was a legitimate concern, no, on the part of the legislators who questioned who made an issue on 9225. But if I recall correctly, the resolution was simple: that there are certain aspects of certain privileges or certain benefits or rights that still can be withdrawn by government if it will lead to a possibility or it will lead to an issue on double allegiance. So for example, if you would go to the implementing rules and regulation of 9225, you cannot actually exercise the right of reacquisition or retention of Philippine citizenship if you're actually in active duty or you're commissioned in the military service of the foreign country to whom you are already a citizen of. So that's one mechanism, that's one protection that the government was able to, let's say,
Put in place.
enact or put in place in order to avoid the issue on double allegiance.
Right.
Because as stated in the Constitution as well, that dual allegiance is inimical to national interest and should be dealt with by law.
Yes.
So that's one mechanism that was put in place. If you're in active duty in the military, then obviously your loyalty, is divided, and hindi yan pwede. But and later on, and probably discuss, I think later down the line, is when you hold public office as well, then hindi ka pwede maging dual citizen because public office is public trust, diba? And public office is in the service of the Filipino, then your loyalty must be exclusive to the Philippine government. So dual citizenship in that instance may lead to dual allegiance, which is prescribed by the law, by the organic law, which is the Constitution.
Ayan, this is getting interested siguro particularly to the over 12 million Filipinos abroad, particularly those who have married and lived for quite a long time and acquired their citizenship in their country of residency. So, attorney and mga katribos, stay with us. We will be back after a few reminders.
Si Harry Roque ang pinakamagaling na spokesman, kaya inggit sa kanya ang oposisyon.
Tama lang na ipinaglaban ko ang balik trabaho para bumalik ang kita ng mga nagtatrabaho at naghahanap buhay. Hindi pwedeng magutom ang pamilya. Dapat lang po ingat buhay para sa hanap buhay. Basta trabaho, kita at hanap buhay ang nakataya. Nasa harap niyo po ako.
Ibigay natin ang tudong suporta kay Harry.
Mapalutong bahay man o sumptuous meal for special occasions, sagot na kayo ng Tropang Kalanpag. Dahil atid sa inyo ng Daily Tribune ang fun and exciting cooking show na Kalanpag, manood at matuto kung paano lutuin ang mga favorite nyong recipes. Sabayan pa ng fun and inspiring na kwentuhan sa kusina. I-upgrade na rin natin ang mga nakasanayang traditional dish ng pamilya. Plus, healthy tipid tips na ibabahagi ng Tropang Kalanpag. Matuto, mabusog at good vibes dito lang sa Kalanpag tuwing Lunes, 10:30 a.m. sa Daily Tribune Facebook page at Tribune Now on YouTube. Fun and inspiring na kwentuhan? Sagot na yan ang programang Spotlight ng Daily Tribune. Makipagkwentuhan at kilalanin ng iba't ibang personalidad na kilala sa kani-kanilang larangan. Manood at makinig sa mga inspiring stories na kanilang ibabahagi kasama si Nina Ventura at Jojo Silvestre. Be ready ng mamangha at matuwa every Thursday alas 2 ng hapon dito lang sa Daily Tribune Facebook page at Tribune Now on YouTube.
Si Harry Roque ang pinakamagaling na spokesman, kaya inggit sa kanya ang oposisyon.
Tama lang na ipinaglaban ko ang balik trabaho para bumalik ang kita ng mga nagtatrabaho at naghahanap buhay. Hindi pwedeng magutom ang pamilya. Dapat lang po ingat buhay para sa hanap buhay. Basta trabaho, kita at hanap buhay ang nakataya. Nasa harap niyo po ako.
Ibigay natin ang tunong suporta kay Harry.
You're still watching Kalingang Katribu Legal Diaries with Atty. Alfred Campañano. Attorney, diretso tayo sa ating discussion. Kung magpapile ako, halimbawa ako ay naging naturalized ako sa isang bansa, what are the steps and requirements so that I can file a petition for retention or reacquisition of my Philippine citizenship?
Sorry, hindi pa akala ko nakamute ako.
All right, go ahead.
So, let's see. So the first, obviously, when you're contemplating of reacquiring or retaining your Philippine citizenship, then you have to first determine whether you are qualified. So you have to determine your eligibility, or in this case, or ineligibility. Baka naman hindi. So obviously, the stemming from the policy as stated in 9225, then the idea here is natural-born Filipinos, diba?
Yes.
who acquires foreign citizenship are deemed to not have lost their Philippine citizenship. So from the statement itself, from the policy, then you can already see there's one standard of eligibility, that you must be a natural-born Filipino. So in this case, if your citizenship was acquired by virtue of naturalization or Commonwealth Act number 473, then obviously you are not qualified for the benefits provided in 9225. Then second is, obviously, since you're talking about natural-born, being a natural-born citizen, then you must adduce proof that you are indeed a natural-born Filipino. One of which is yung certificate of live birth, duly issued by the Philippine Statistics Authority. Now, please note that in that CLB, it must clearly state that at least one of the parents is actually Filipino. In the case of those who were born to Filipino mothers and born before January 17, 1973, then, excuse me, then you must also have a certificate of election of Philippine citizenship. If you are a Filipino, or if you are a person rather that is born to a Filipino parent, and you were actually born abroad, di ba? For example, doon ka pinanganak sa United States, you are still considered as a natural-born Filipino because one of your parents is natural-born. But in order to prove your natural-born status, then you must have a report of birth issued by the Philippine Embassy in the place or in the country of your birth, together obviously with the certificate of live birth issued by the foreign authority. So, kunwari, the PSA equivalent of the United States obviously will be issuing a birth certificate kasi doon ka pinanganak.
Yes.
You will be registered accordingly. But there has to be an accompanying report of birth to the Philippine Embassy as well. Tapos, after determining or after adducing proof of your natural-bornness, then you will also have to accomplish a verified petition. This is normally pro forma, but It's pro forma, may mga attachments yan. But that does not stop you from, creating your own petition if you wish to do so.
Alright.
Then, meron tayo yung ina-execute na Oath of Allegiance. Actually, there's the Oath of Allegiance, hindi ko kabisado yan.
Alright.
parang Alfred Campañano, basta parang the Oath of Allegiance is you're going to show your loyalty, the recognition of the Philippine laws, the recognition of the Philippine government as a supreme authority over its territory,
Alright.
yung mga ganyang concepts, no? It must be notarized, but if you're filing in a Philippine embassy or in the Philippine consulate, then hindi na kailangan notarized because the consulate general is actually one of those individuals who can administer
Out.
an oath.
Okay.
You would need a 2x2 colored photos. Baka nagbago na yan. Based on my experience in assisting a client to do so, 2x2 ang naalala ko. White background dapat. Tapos nagpa-require na lang ako yung one with the name and one without the other. And I recall correctly, ang kinuha ata sa kanya is yung with the name.
Mhm.
So, i-prepare nyo na lang both kasi medyo nagva-vary yan depending on who will be receiving your application.
Anyway,
Tapos there's
attorney, these requirements naman yata po pwedeng makuha sa mga embassy. They can ask kung nandun sila sa kung ano itong mga requirements na ito, right?
yes po, nandun naman yan. Makikita nakalist naman siya. Just
Yan.
prepare those.
Ito nga kasi yung problema. Marami mga Pinoy are married to foreign nationals. Ito nagkaanak. Now they want to reacquire Philippine citizenship. Paano yung mga anak? Paano rin yung foreign na asawa?
For foreign spouses, then for foreign spouses, hindi pwede. You cannot acquire Philippine citizenship by virtue of 9225. You can be naturalized under Commonwealth Act number 473.
Yes. Hello, attorney. I think we have lost our connection with the attorney. We will be trying to resume our discussion with Attorney Campañano by resuming our discussion of RA 9225. Attorney, are you back, attorney?
Hello.
Yeah. We have for a moment apparently lost our connection due to some technical issues. Okay, you were discussing about the spouse who is not
Yes.
eligible under 9225. But what about the children?
The children are actually entitled to acquire Philippine citizenship under 9225, provided that they are actually included in the application and they are minors. Then of course, there are additional requirements that will have to be presented. That's what we call derivative citizenship. Nakakakuha sila ng derivative citizenship by virtue of the reacquisition or retention of the Filipino spouse. So, Philippine citizenship.
All right. But is there a residency requirement? Let's say I was naturalized in another country. I want to reacquire my citizenship by virtue of RA 9225 or under RA 9225. Is there any residency requirement? Kailangan bang bumalik muna ako dito sa Pilipinas to reacquire my citizenship?
Sorry.
Is there any residency requirement, for example, for anybody applying to reacquire his Philippine citizenship under RA 9225?
Under RA 9225, residency is not a requirement in order to retain or reacquire Philippine citizenship. It's not one of those conditions. But I understand where the question is coming from, because residency is an issue, but only when you're exercising certain privileges once citizenship has been reacquired. But no, Sir Roy, no, there's no residency requirement.
All right. So, Ano naman, what rights and privileges naman ang makukuha ko if I complete the process and I reacquired my Philippine citizenship? Anong benefit nito sa akin, for example?
Well, again, once you have reacquired or retained your Philippine citizenship, the idea here is you're basically a Filipino. So you're allowed to vote in Philippine elections. You're allowed to own land and property, engage trade or business without necessarily undergoing yung mga foreign securing investment visas. You're allowed to practice your profession, provided, of course, you're indeed qualified or eligible to practice the same in accordance with Philippine laws. You're allowed to travel the country bearing a Philippine passport. You're allowed to, I think yun lang naman. And among others, marami yan. Basta basically, the overarching statement should be, once you have reacquired or you have retained your Philippine citizenship in accordance with 9225, the full civil, economic, and political rights guaranteed by the Philippine Constitution and its laws are once again allowed or extended to you being a Filipino.
So, attorney, that includes the holding of public office in the Philippines?
The holding of public office, no.
Mm-hmm.
What my statement there is no, because once you have reacquired your, you have retained or reacquired your Philippine citizenship. The reason why 9225 is known as the dual citizenship law is because of that. It's dual. The resulting effect is you are a dual citizen in the eyes of the Philippine government. You're a citizen of the Philippines, and you're a citizen of whatever jurisdiction you are a citizen of. But my answer there is you're not allowed to hold public office because if you are a dual citizen, you will be required to renounce that foreign citizenship in order for you to hold public office, whether it's appointive or elective in nature. So you will have to execute a renunciation of the foreign. Yan yung nabanggit ko po kanina.
Yes.
Na these are one of the safeguards that the Philippine government had instituted in order to avoid situations that puts into question one's allegiance to the state. Public office is one of those interest points in our government na kung saan you cannot be leading the country and at the same time be loyal to another country.
Yes, yes.
So, yan yung doon. So you will have to execute you have to renounce your foreign citizenship. For appointed positions, you must renounce your foreign citizenship before or prior to your assumption to office. While for elective officials, renunciation of one's foreign citizenship must be done at the time of the filing of your certificate of candidacy.
Pero, of course, if you cannot run for public office, can you practice your profession? For example, I'm a former lawyer. I migrated before. I went back to the Philippines, reacquired my Philippine citizenship. Can I practice my profession, or a doctor, for instance?
As we practice a profession, you're allowed to do so in the Philippines, provided, as I have mentioned, that you are actually meet the standards to practice said profession in the country or in the Philippines. I think, with the exception of law practice in the Philippines, certain professions have treaties. We have treaties with other professions that allows you to be deemed as to exercise the profession if you've passed Philippine standards. So, for example lang, but I have yet to verify it. I think accountants. If you're an accountant in the Philippines, there are treaties that makes you eligible to be an accountant elsewhere. No, so why am I discussing this? Because you first and foremost, you must be eligible to practice the profession in the Philippines in terms of qualifications. For example, if in the case of a lawyer, for example, hindi mo naman pwedeng i-practice ang profession na hindi ka naman pala member of the bar.
Yes.
Diba? That's what I'm trying to point out. So in the same vein, you have to be an actual accountant under Philippine law in order to practice that profession. You must meet the standards of being considered as an accountant in the Philippines in order to practice the profession. Now, once you have going back then to citizenship, and we have determined that you are indeed a qualified CPA under Philippine law, supposedly you have lost that right to practice the profession the moment that you have renounced your Philippine citizenship.
Yes.
That's the idea there. So, by virtue of 9225, once you have reacquired or retained your Philippine citizenship, you may be allowed, yan ang important phrase to that, you may be allowed to practice the profession provided that you apply with the governing authority to allow you to practice. Until such permission has been secured, you are not allowed to practice the profession. Apply ka sa PRC for most professions. For lawyers who have lost their Philippine citizenship, for members of the Philippine Bar who have lost their Philippine citizenship, then they will have to apply or petition themselves to allow to practice again with the Supreme Court.
Ayan, but I understand, kailangan mong kumuha pa uli ng na-miss mo mga MCLE units?
Yes, kasi the MCLE, and I suppose even for similar professions, like accountants, yung kanilang tinatawag na continuing professional development, kung gano'n na mangyari, hahabulin mo yan. Kasi nga, the MCLE, for example, for us lawyers, were imposed in order to force lawyers to keep themselves abreast with the developments in the legal landscape.
Ayan, attorney. Very interesting. So, mga katribo, stay with us. We will be back after a few reminders.
Araneta City, home to the country's first indoor.
Ang Daily Tribune may digital shows na din. Dahil sa mas lumalaki at mas lumalakas nating tribu, handog sa inyo ng Daily Tribune ang mga programang magbibigay buhay araw-araw. Be informed at mag-good vibes tuwing umaga sa programang Gising Na. Be updated sa news and happenings sa Tribune News on Cue. Mas kilalanin pa natin ang mga paborito nyong atleta sa programang The Athletes Tribune. Alamin ang latest entertainment sa programang What's Up. Ma-inspire sa mga kwentong hatid ng Perfect. Search lang ang Daily Tribune sa inyong Facebook at Tribune Now on YouTube. See you there, mga katribu! Mga impormasyong direktang makukuha mula sa sources at diretsahang usapan. Yan ang ating damin sa inyo sa programang Straight Talk. Samahan nyo kami sa makabuluhang talakayan live tuwing Martes alas 10 ng umaga sa official Facebook page ng Daily Tribune at Tribune Now on YouTube. Makinig at makisali sa usapan every Friday night at 6 p.m. sa I Speak Katribu Podcast. Samahan sina Daniel at Alvin na pag-usapan ang mga relevant topic na tiyak kakarelatean nyo mga katribu. At pagdating ng Sunday at 7 p.m., Speak Your Mind with our I Speak program na sasagot sa mga tanong regarding the latest and relevant issues sa paligid natin. I-like at i-follow nyo ang Daily Tribune Facebook page at Tribune Now on YouTube para updated ka sa mga latest episode namin mga katribu.
You're still watching Kalingang Katribu Legal Diaries, and with us today is Attorney Alfred Campañano. Attorney, let's resume our discussion. It's getting to be very interesting. So, if, for example, a Filipino citizen from another foreign country wants to travel to the Philippines with his or her foreign spouse and children, do they need yung mga foreign spouse and children ba, do they need to secure additional travel documents from the Philippine Embassy beforehand?
No, sir, they don't need to. It's one of the benefits provided for under the Balikbayan law. Provided that their stay here in the country is only a year. So meaning maghahanap ng proof ang immigration na babalik kayo dyan. So more often than not, the common proof is your we call this yung round trip ticket. And second, and most importantly, is yung fact na you are actually traveling with a Filipino.
Ayun.
With a Filipino spouse.
All right. So, all right. One more question. Okay, I'm traveling. A Filipino citizen, a dual Filipino citizen, is traveling from a foreign country to the Philippines. What passport should he be using? Is he required to present a Philippine passport, or kung may passport na siya dun sa foreign country, po pwede na yon?
Well, that's what I tried to look kung there's a specific regulation for it. Unfortunately, wala akong nakita. So what I did is to ask yung mga kilala ko na dual citizen, and apparently what they do is they actually just make a choice kung ano ang gagamitin nilang passport for purposes of their travel. So kung ano yung mas convenient, that's mostly the consideration, then yan na yung pinapakita nilang travel documents. Kasi remember, certain passports, may tinatawag tayong mga kapangyarihan ng passport eh. So, most likely that's one of the considerations that you should consider when deciding what passport to use. So, ang alam ko, for example, sa Singapore, visa-free ata ang Filipino. So, if you present your Philippine citizenship through your passport, then hindi ka nahahanapan ng travel visa.
Yun. So, anyway, bahala na sila kung anong passport. Importante, meron silang passport. If they're coming from a visa country, yung kanilang I assume yung kanilang mga foreign spouses and children needs to have the visa too.
Siguro, sir, going lang dun back lang sa passport. I think the more important thing to remember here, to note here is the situation where a person has a valid passport at the time na wala ang kanyang Philippine citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Or kaka-renew lang and then reacquire niya ang kanyang Philippine citizenship. For both situations, wala nang visa yung passport niya.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it is as if you will have to reapply a new Philippine passport because prospective ang application ng ating reacquisition.
Alright. So, para maiwasan yung complication, siguraduhin muna if the passport is still valid or not para maiwasan yung mga travel complications. Anyway, very interesting discussion, but I have a trivia to share, Attorney. Let me know if you have anything to say or comment on this one. It was provided to us by our staff through our Tribune. Tribune know that foreign nationals who were born outside of the Philippines to a Filipino parent can still buy properties in the Philippines by reacquiring citizenship under the Dual Citizenship Act.
Foreign nationals who were born outside of the Philippines.
Ayan, Attorney. Tama ba ito, Attorney?
Actually.
Basta importante may pambili, no?
Kasi from the statement, who were born outside of the Philippines to a Filipino parent. Remember, ang medyo may reservation lang ako dito is yung by reacquiring citizenship under the Dual Citizenship Act. So the statement is referring to 9225. Ang reservation ko dun is the last part because the conditions stated so far meets the qualification that this person is a Filipino citizen.
Yes.
Kasi remember, we've discussed na a natural-born citizen is a person who is born
Yes.
to a Filipino parent. Did I read it correctly? May I check ulit yung ano? Baka naman a Filipino parent. I would assume that this Filipino parent is a Filipino citizen.
Yes.
But I think this statement would make sense and it would be factually, would be accurate if gawin mo na lang to a Filipino national.
Yeah.
Because a Filipino national is not necessarily a Filipino citizen.
Probably this trivia was referring specifically to those born in the U.S. to Filipino parents. Both natural citizens of the Philippines, they have not lost their citizenship, but considered a U.S. national by virtue of being born there.
Then in that case, to me, I have to caution lang from that statement because in that case, hindi mo na kinakailangan to reacquire because you are considered as a Filipino
already
citizen.
considered a Filipino citizen.
Ang magiging problema mo lang dyan is to prove your natural-born citizenship. Should someone contest your ownership over that?
Ayan. Thank you for joining us today, Atty. Campañano. Always a pleasure talking to you. Always informative and very helpful. And thank you mga Katribo for joining yet another informative episode of Kalingang Katribu Legal Diaries. You can watch us live on Daily Tribune's official Facebook page every Fridays at 3:30 in the afternoon. And you can watch the replays of the episodes here as well on Tribune Now on YouTube. Again, I'm Roy Pelovello. Good afternoon.
Thank you.